Welcome everyone to Quanex Building Products' second webinar on the Energy Star version 6 updates. Today we'll be discussing one of our tools, the Optimizer Special Edition, and how it can help you in reaching your Energy Star goals. If you haven't already, please be sure to visit our dedicated resource center at www.quanex.com/EnergyStar for more information and tools, including the Optimizer. It looks like we have a lot of great people on the call today. Thank you so much for joining. My name is Carrie Sheets, and I'm the Trade Show and Events Specialist at Quanex and your moderator today. I've been with Quanex for 3 years and in the industry for more than 8 years. Today's webinar is especially exciting as we'll be walking you through one of Quanex's best resources to aid you in this Energy Star process. If this is your first time logging into our Energy Star webinar series, welcome. For those of you who joined us for our last one in March, thanks for joining us again. Our presentation will last about 30 minutes today, followed by a question and answer session where we'll answer questions you submit throughout the presentation. Before we begin, a few housekeeping items. Please be sure to disable pop-up blockers on your computer for the best viewing experience. You can adjust your screen view in the lower left-hand corner. If you're having trouble viewing the entire slide, click on the Fit in Viewer option. If you have questions for today's speaker throughout the presentation, or if you're experiencing technical difficulties, please message me directly using the Q&A feature to the right. You can also send an email to quanexpr@quanex.com with any technical issues. We'll be monitoring that email throughout the webinar as well. We'll have 3 polling questions throughout the 30-minute webinar. To participate, please answer the questions that appear on the right side of your screen. Don't forget to hit submit so we can see your answers. Without further ado, I'd like to introduce today's speaker. Doug Hauk is a Senior Tech Services Engineer at Quanex. He's been with Quanex for 8 years and was key to the development of our Optimizer tool. Doug has worked to develop this presentation that breaks down this tool, its benefits, and how to use it to help meet your Energy Star goals. Doug, take it away.
Thanks, Carrie. Okay, I'm going to discuss the Optimizer in a moment, but first let me go over some basic facts just about Energy Star. As most of you know, Energy Star version 6 was released on January 17, 2014 for Windows doors and skylights. We covered this more in depth on our previous webinar, which you can listen to on demand at www.quanex.com/EnergyStar. But some major points of the differentiation are consolidation of the North Central and South Central zones U-factor requirement, a reduction of the Southern zone U-factor by 33%. These two go into effect on January 1st, 2015. Additionally, there is a 10% U-factor reduction and a third level of trade-offs for the Northern zone, which goes into effect January 1st, 2016. So why should you continue to participate in the Energy Star program? Well, Energy Star is a brand consumers have come to trust over the last 20 years. Consumers recognize the Energy Star label as a symbol of superior performance and product efficiency. Additionally, since 2001, every Energy Star change in requirements has led to a larger market share of Energy Star windows. We're currently looking at about 80% of all windows being sold are as Energy Star rated. Here's a chart with the specific criteria. We won't spend a ton of time on this, as we covered it more in depth during the last month's webinar. But if you have questions on zone-specific requirements, you can find this chart and other resources on our Quanex Energy Star page.
Before we dive into the Optimizer tool for Energy Star V6, we have a quick polling question located at the lower right of your screen. Have you used the Quanex Optimizer tool before? Please click yes or no to the question in the bottom right-hand corner of your screen and hit submit. We'll give everyone a few seconds to respond and for the results to calculate. But while we're waiting, we wanted to also mention that this is our second webinar in the Energy Star series for Quanex. We have 5 more planned throughout 2014, and the next one will be from Rick Jackson, Quanex's Director of Government Relations, on EPA cost analysis. We'll also have future webinars on component impact, federal, state, and utility incentives, Quanex IG solutions, and Quanex window and door system solutions. Check back on quanex.com/EnergyStar for updates on dates and times for these presentations. Okay, the poll is in, and it looks like 40% of you have not yet used the Optimizer tool. So now that we have a better understanding of what page everyone's on, let's go back to Doug to walk us through this tool.
Okay, so let's get to the real question then. How can you use the Optimizer for Energy Star version 6 purposes? The upcoming changes, especially regarding the new northern zone limits, have many manufacturers reevaluating their programs, asking the question, what do I need to do to reach my Energy Star goals? Can I reach the northern base values with just IG glass or gas fill changes? If not, can IG get me to one of the 3 solar heat gain equivalencies? If I can't make it with just IG changes, or if the IG changes are just too expensive, what frame or spacer changes should I try? That's where the Optimizer can help. Before we discuss how to use this tool, let's talk a little bit about how it works. Without getting into too much detail, the Optimizer is based on a mathematical relationship between the center of glass and the whole window values for U factor, solar heat gain, and visual transmittance. This relationship is unique for each combination of frame and spacer and can be derived from existing modeling results. We call this relationship the Optimizer equation, and we can use it to predict the effects of changing IG options in a given combination. Well, what can this do for you exactly? Here are some suggestions. You can use it to look at hundreds of different IG combinations in your current frame and spacer, or you can use it to compare spacer effects by reviewing different spacers with your frame and a select few IG combos. Or you can compare frame and spacer effects by reviewing those IG options with a range of frame and spacer choices. The Optimizer is a tool to help you plan your course of action.
Now that we know how the Optimizer can benefit you, we're going to conduct a quick poll question. What do you feel is the most intimidating factor about using a tool like this one? A, ease of use, B, security of my information, C, technical issues, or D, I don't have any concerns. Okay, it looks like we've got a couple more answers coming in. And it looks like the most intimidating factor is A, ease of use. 36% of you feel that that's a hindrance there. So these answers are a nice preview of what Doug will be discussing in the next few minutes. We want to make sure everyone is comfortable using the app, knowing how to utilize the technology, and knowing your information is secure. This is good information, so Doug can talk us through what Quanex does to address your concerns.
Okay, in the last slide, I told you you could see results for your own windows. Let's talk a little bit about how to make that happen. Getting your windows loaded into the Optimizer is generally pretty painless. Yes, it does require some pre-existing modeling work to have been done on your windows, but if your windows are in the NFRC's Certified Products Directory, chances are you have all the data we need. You just have to get it to us. Start by calling your simulator, ATI, NCTL, Intermodal, whomever, and ask them for the Windows 6 files that hold the simulation results for these windows. For those who may not know, Windows 6 is one of the 2 software packages used in the residential modeling path, and as part of its calculation process, it stores all the necessary input data along with the calculation results in a single Microsoft Access database file. This is the file that we want. Send this file, or files if there are multiple Windows series you want loaded, to us here at Quanex. We'll pull out the necessary data, clean it up for loading into the Optimizer database. We might also contact you again for further information that may not be obvious from the Windows 6 file. For example, what are the actual names of your frame systems, as you'd like to see them on the Optimizer page? Once we have everything, we'll load the data into the database and let you know that your windows are ready. At that point, you just log into the Optimizer webpage or iPad app and start working with your windows. All right, understandably, some people might have security concerns, such as how the data will be used, who can look at the results, and what they're going to see. Let's go over those right now. First, the raw data that you send will only be seen by the person who cleans it up and loads it into the Optimizer, and that's only me. The data you send will be held in the strictest confidence. It will not be handed around, even to other departments within Quanex. Second, the window estimates, that is, the actual outputs of the Optimizer, can only be seen by you and by Quanex personnel. They cannot be seen by the general public. On your end, you will be asked to provide a list of registered users whom you'd like to have access to your frames. On our end, yes, your local sales rep might use the results to suggest some Quanex products to help your thermal performance, but we do not use your Optimizer results in general sales or marketing campaigns. For example, that means that we would never take, say, XYZ Windows results and share them in a brochure. Finally, just to be clear, even the data that people can see has been scrubbed prior to loading. Normal users can only see the output results, and even administrative users like myself can only see numeric data. There's nowhere in the database where we store any proprietary data like profile drawings or therm files. Now let's talk about exploring your options. There are 3 possible steps to finding a compliance path with the Optimizer, with the idea that if one step succeeds, you don't need to continue to the next. Obviously, the first step is to use the Optimizer in its most basic form. Try all the different IG options with one of your frames and one or more of your spacers. This way, you can see what you can do with just glass and gas changes. For best results, you should try as many IG options as possible and let the filters do the work of sorting good results from bad. For today's purposes, we're going to select one of the pre-configured Energy Star filters, but in the future, you might apply your own. Let's see how this would work. Let's walk through an IG changes scenario. You start by selecting the window operator. This loads up the frame selection list with frames of that style. Now select the individual frames you want to view. Your windows will show up here if they are in the Optimizer. Select the spacer or spacers you want to use. Select the various IG configuration filters, or leave them blank to view all options. Remember that it works best if you cast a wide net. Finally, you set your results filters by using one of the Energy Star zones. That's it. Scroll down to view your results, or download them into an Excel file for further study. All right, so you've tested your frame with lots of IG, but you're still not happy. Maybe the IG couldn't get you where you want to go, or maybe it could, but you don't like the price premiums. You want more, so what's next? Now you take the top results from the IG study, maybe the top 10 performers, or maybe the top 5 that you think you could reasonably make without breaking your budget, and you try those with a range of frame and spacer options. Maybe before you left out the foam frame results. Now you bring them back in. Maybe you only tried it with the steel spacer that is 80% of your production. Now pull in the Duralite that you normally only use for specials. Also, the Quanex frame series are available to all users. Feel free to throw them into the mix as well. Here's how step 2 would work. As before, start by selecting the operator style. But now, go right down and select the IG options. This time, make sure to select the options that specify just those top 5 or 10 IG units that you want to test with. Select the frame, spacer, and zone filter, and look at your results. Make sure to view the results for all the Energy Star zones you're interested in. I would also load them into Excel and look for duplicates, that is to say, configurations that make more than one set of zone filters. All right, maybe you still aren't satisfied with the results. Maybe you want to try a whole new spacer you've never used before. All right, so step 3 is to call Quanex directly. You know, if the optimizer were perfect, I wouldn't have a job. Lucky for me, then it has some limitations. First, the optimizer does not have the ability to calculate the Canadian Energy Rating, or ER number. The ER has a frame air leakage component, and we don't have that information stored in the optimizer. Because the ER is part of the Canadian Energy Star specification, there's no filters for that program in the optimizer at this time. Second, as I mentioned before, the optimizer can only predict results from existing frame and spacer modeling. That means that if you haven't modeled the foam-filled version of your frame, we can't tell you what the foam will do for you. Likewise, if you've only modeled the frame with Intercept, it can't tell you what you're going to get with Duralite. But the most commonly encountered limitation of the optimizer is that its glass selection is just very limited, with just a couple of low-E options from each of the major glass manufacturers. The reason for this is simple practicality. Adding all the possible glass options would make the selection list so long you'd never be able to find the combination you want. Quanex is looking into other options to get around this, but for now, this is the limit that we have. But we can deal with it. Maybe you need energy rating values for Canadian Energy Star. Maybe you have a couple of glass or gas options you like to try that aren't in the current list. No problem. Send us your data and tell us what it is you want to know. We can use the optimizer equation to manually calculate your results in an Excel spreadsheet for you. This is actually relatively easy on our part, as long as all the data is in place. On the other hand, if you want to get results for frame or spacer options that weren't part of the original modeling, we can help with that as well. This is somewhat trickier though, so this is where we would need to work closely together with you. For example, we might need other files from you, such as your therm files, or we might have to schedule additional modeling from one of the labs, and that could mean there are some associated costs. Each case is different. Just as a reminder though, the optimizer tool and our services are free of cost. Finally, the optimizer isn't the only club in our bag. We recommend you call your local sales rep to see how else we can assist you. All right, so to summarize, Energy Star version 6 is here. We all need to be ready to meet it. Quanex and the Quanex Optimizer can help with that. The steps are: 1. Get your windows loaded into the optimizer to see what you can do with your current configuration. 2. Compare your current frame and spacer options with a wide range of other options to see what you can achieve now. And 3, if you need more from the optimizer, or if you need something else entirely, don't hesitate to call us. We're here to help.
Thanks, Doug, for walking us through this process. Now that we've all seen it in action firsthand, I'd like to pose the same question we asked before. After hearing the presentation today, are any of these concerns still factors in your decision to use the optimizer? A, ease of use, B, security of my information, C, technical issues, or D, I don't have any concerns. Click on the answer in the bottom right-hand corner and hit Submit. And while we're waiting on the results, as I mentioned earlier, our next webinar will be in May on EPA cost analysis. Here you'll see the other webinars we'll be holding throughout the year. We've got exciting stuff coming up, so stay tuned for specific dates and times. When you exit the webinar today, there will be a brief survey. Please take the time to answer the questions so we can better serve you throughout this webinar series. This webinar will also be available on demand if you missed a portion of it or want to reference it in the future. Okay, the results are in, and it looks like we have now 71% that say they don't have any concerns after hearing the webinar. That's great. Doug and others at Quanex work diligently to produce this tool that will aid you in your process. So we're excited to give you this resource and work with you through the Energy Star compliancy. That concludes the presentation portion of our Optimizer webinar. We'll be starting our Q&A session in just a minute, so please submit your questions by using the Q&A feature to the right. Okay, we'll go ahead and start the Q&A portion of the webinar. Thank you for submitting your questions throughout the presentation. We'll do our best to get through all of them, but for the questions we aren't able to address, we'll be following up with you soon. As I mentioned earlier, our next webinar will cover EPA cost analysis, but if you do have immediate questions in the interim, please send them our way and we'll be happy to answer them. It looks like we have our first question, Doug. What are some ways I can access the Optimizer?
Okay, well, there's two ways that you can get to the Optimizer. The first, maybe the easiest way, is to just go to the web page, www.quanexoptimizer.com. all one word, .com. You register there on the web page, and then you can go ahead and just run your window simulations right there on the web using your normal internet browser. The other option that you can do, though, is you can download our free iPad app. That works approximately the same way. It looks a little bit different from the web version, but it runs through all the same things. The only difference is the web version is capable of doing the Excel download. The iPad version is not. And the reason for that is simply because there's not a lot of reason to download Excel files onto your iPad. So that is limited to the web version.
Okay. The next question is, when does V6 go into effect?
Energy Star version 6 goes into effect. Okay, so it goes in 2015 for the, give me just a second here to rearrange. So, version 6 goes into effect 2015, January 1st, 2015, for almost all of the zones, the North Central, South Central, and Southern zones. That will go into effect on the 1st of January 2015. The remaining northern zone is the one that has actually been put off for 2 years at manufacturer's request. And that will not, therefore, go into effect until January 1st, 2016.
Okay. The next question is, how do you estimate cost premiums?
How do you estimate cost premiums? I'm really more of a thermal performance guy. Now, I will say we have been working on a tool that would allow you to evaluate what your costs are. That tool is not completed yet. When it has been completed, we will release it on the Quanex Energy Star page. We'll probably call it something along the lines of the Cost Miser, because we're engineers and not very original with names. But we will be releasing that sometime in the next couple of months, and that is a tool that will allow you to evaluate all the different costs of your different frame series, window series, glass costs, manufacturing costs, and that tool will be able to import results from the Optimizer, and then you'll be able to compare the cost of making a window with the thermal performance of that window as calculated by the Optimizer and figure out what path you would like to follow for manufacturing in the future.
Okay. The next question is, does the Optimizer replace modeling? Is it biased to Quanex products?
Well, that's two questions. The first question is, it does not replace modeling. You will still need to model those windows. The idea behind the Optimizer is that we had noticed that many of our customers were sending to the labs huge numbers of different configurations. Basically, they were using like a shotgun approach, and they were paying top dollar for each one of those simulations, sometimes upwards of 1,000 simulations, just to pull out 15 or 20 that actually got them where they wanted to. Using the Optimizer, you can run those numbers quickly and easily, run your thousands of simulations. Like I said, it's better to cast a wide net. You use the filters to pull in only those ones that meet the criteria that you want, and that might get you 10 or 15, or it might even get you 30 or 30 configurations. And then you take those 30 configurations that you actually plan to build. Those are what you send out to the lab for modeling. So we cannot get you sticker values. It is an estimator. It is not an actual modeling program, but it can definitely point you in the right direction and save you a truckload on your full modeling results. As to the the second question, no, it is not biased in any way towards Quanex products. Quanex products are thrown into the Optimizer, same as any other Windows series, and they are left to stand on their own benefits. If a Quanex product is not particularly helpful to you for a particular situation, the Optimizer will show that. So you don't have to worry that we're using it to tout our own products. We put them in there on even footing with everyone else.
Great. And the next question is, how do you prevent other manufacturers from viewing our therm files and other information?
Other manufacturers cannot view your therm files simply because the therm files are not in the Optimizer at all. So that data is not even in there. Even other Quanex people cannot view that. I don't, as a general rule, even ask for your therm files. I only ask for the Windows 6 database file, and that's pure numbers. So none of that stuff is in there to begin with. If I do need to ask for therm files only because you want some additional modeling done, I will use those therm files for the additional modeling. However, again, those are not in any way put into the Optimizer. Once you put your data into the Optimizer, even just to view Optimizer results for your frames, you will need to actually specify a list of Optimizer users, registered users, to me, and I will manually hook up your users with your frames. And no one who is not on that list will be able to see those frame series. So you don't have to worry about that. The only people who can see, and this is only for Optimizer results, Quanex personnel can see the results for your frames. They cannot see any of the data that went into the Optimizer, but they can see the output of the Optimizer for your frames. And they may use it. Your local sales rep will be the one looking at it, and he'll be looking at it to help you with your designs. Carrie.
Okay. Well, that seems to be all the questions that we have. We will be following up with you on any questions we weren't able to answer if any come in the meantime. If you do have questions, you can email those to quanexpr@quanex.com. And in the meantime, also, please complete the brief survey that will pop up at the conclusion of the webinar to help us create additional tools and resources to help your business. Thank you again so much for attending, and have a great afternoon.